There is a strict biological ceiling on how much revenue a single person can generate. We all operate within a finite 168-hour week. When your income is tied directly to the physical hours you spend laboring over a task, your potential wealth is permanently capped. The traditional professional services firm operates on this exact flaw. These models tether revenue directly to the hours of a senior expert. You sell your expertise by the hour, which means growth always requires more of your personal time. This creates a linear effort model, where growth requires blunt personal force to push the needle forward. To escape this, the modern firm requires a surgical decoupling. You have to separate the time you spend working from the value you deliver to the client. Transitioning to the right side of this curve requires assets that generate value autonomously. To achieve this exponential impact, the architect of a firm utilizes 4 specific multipliers that function independently of their own labor: capital, labor, software, and Lydia. To execute this shift, we need to map the exact organizational taxonomy required to move from a capped, hourly career to an enterprise capable of exponential impact. Relying on your own elite expertise is a structural bottleneck. If your personal brilliance is required to deliver the work, you are actively preventing your firm from achieving high-margin growth. This blank 3-tiered pyramid represents the foundational driver of a firm's profitability, its organizational structure. The goal of this structure is specific: to capture the margin surplus between the cost of junior labor and the premium rates billed to clients. The base of the pyramid consists of the grinders. These are junior staff executing the bulk of the technical delivery. To maximize the firm's surplus, this tier must operate at high volume, targeting a 90% utilization rate. Moving up, we find the minders. These are the mid-level managers responsible for day-to-day project supervision. Their role is to bridge high-level strategy with technical execution, operating at a 75% target utilization. At the apex are the finders. These senior partners handle relationship management and originate the premium build business. They bring in the high-value work, targeting a 70% utilization rate. When perfectly balanced, this ecosystem generates immense cash flow, but it is fragile. If leadership tolerates structural inefficiencies, what we call leverage killers, the surplus evaporates. The first failure point appears as overhead staff. Notice these heavy gray blocks weighing down the top. These are managers who cannot be invoiced. An unbillable manager acts as a heavy lid on your leverage, consuming profits without generating revenue. The second, far more fatal failure point happens when a firm fails to transition senior staff into business development. Look at the base cracking here. This represents a grinder-level professional who is still executing technical tasks but receiving a finder-level salary. Fixed costs rapidly consume the margin. Maintaining strict role definitions and utilization targets is the only mathematical way to extract surplus margin from human capital. To measure how effectively that surplus is captured, we use this equation: net profit per partner. This is the professional services equivalent to the DuPont formula used in industrial finance. It breaks wealth creation down into 3 exact variables. First, margin expands to show the percentage of revenue remaining after all costs. Next is productivity, which calculates the revenue generated per employee based on their average hourly rate and utilization. But the third and most explosive variable is leverage. As the ratio expands here, we see Y over X, the number of non-partner staff over the number of equity partners. Compare a highly productive solo partner against a highly leveraged partner who manages a massive pyramid of junior staff. The solo partner might work relentlessly, but their wealth ultimately remains biologically capped by their own billable capacity. The leveraged partner captures the exponential cash surplus generated by the entire team beneath them. A partner's wealth is dictated not by the hours they personally bill, but by the mathematical scale of the billable engine they govern. That mathematics only holds up if your staffing model actually aligns with the value proposition of the work. If your labor pyramid does not match the specific tier of value the client is purchasing, the equation collapses. We can categorize client value into 3 tiers, as shown in this matrix. The top row is brain surgery. These are bespoke, frontier solutions for entirely new problems. Clients are buying pure brilliance. This demands very low leverage. a ratio of 1:1 or 1:2, and intense senior involvement. Moving to the middle tier, we have proven experience, or cosmetic surgery. Clients hire you because you have solved this exact problem before. This requires a moderate leverage model, where senior staff supervise mid-level managers who recognize the familiar patterns. The bottom tier is standardized efficiency, or procedural work. The problems are well known. The client wants cost-effectiveness and speed. This allows for massive leverage, where repeatable solutions are executed almost entirely by grinders at the base of the pyramid. Margin erosion occurs when there is a leverage mismatch. The most common error is bringing bespoke, elite brains to a procedural, commodity job. If you utilize a senior partner to execute standardized procedures, you become too expensive for the client. Simultaneously, the project's total fee is too small to sustain the partner's required profit margin. Failing to match the operational complexity of a task with the appropriate labor tier immediately erodes profits and stalls firm growth. Aligning a leverage mismatch requires the strategic deployment of repeatable intellectual property. This allows a firm to shift bespoke brain surgery into standardized procedures. This requires rigorous annual IP audits. Leadership must evaluate whether current intellectual assets successfully allow junior staff to operate with complete autonomy. The rule here is strict. If a senior partner has to manually intervene in a procedural task, the intellectual property has failed. By embedding expertise into standard operating procedures and modular code, a firm creates scale economies. The 1,000th unit of service becomes drastically cheaper to produce than the first. When expertise is codified into software or media, the firm can tap into network effects. Metcalfe's law states that the value of a network grows with the square of its users. By owning the language of an industry through its IP, a firm can broadcast its expertise to a massive audience, essentially competing out the opposition and creating a natural monopoly. Success with AI requires a total overhaul of the firm's workflow. It is a change management project that disrupts traditional labor leverage by allowing small, elite teams to achieve the output of massive workforces. Execution requires an N2 or N3 domain leader, specifically a two-in-a-box management model that pairs a technical expert directly with a business operator to reinvent workflows from the ground up. You cannot simply automate the status quo. AI investments must break industry orthodoxies and secure a minimum of 20% incremental value with every new tranche of investment. Codifying brilliant expertise into intellectual property and AI workflows creates permissionless leverage. Your assets generate wealth autonomously, completely independent of your personal time. Look at the insects in this footage. Even after the glass jar is lifted away, they continue to hover beneath an invisible, artificial barrier. This is the upper limit belief, a psychological ceiling that frequently stops experts from scaling their operations. This is the flea in the jar analogy in practice. Founders often act as their own structural lid, refusing to delegate or step back from day-to-day client delivery. Even after building robust, scalable systems, senior experts remain trapped in the habit of doing the work themselves. This actively stifles the growth of junior talent. Breaking this habit requires forcing movement through a strict up or out talent dynamic. You maintain aggressive promotion ratios, advancing perhaps 80. The mandate for leadership is a ruthless evaluation of the firm's current operational lid. If your firm cannot function or generate revenue without your direct daily intervention, you have not built an enterprise. You have built a high-paying job. This image captures the divide. On the left is the mindset of the worker, buried under specialized tasks, relying on finite personal labor. On the right is the architect, operating calmly because they trust the systems they have engineered to bear the weight. Moving to that right side requires the architecture of leverage, deploying financial capital, optimizing labor pyramids, integrating proprietary code, and distributing scalable media. Immense wealth is not a function of how hard you work. It is a function of how effectively you architect the systems that work for you.